Michelle, Donna.
Sign map. Where is it? We have a really nice photo. Where are our reserved seats? I think they're way.
There's lots of seats.
And thanks for coming. It's a special night. My name is Larry Springer, and Thanks, honey. This is the kind of night that I think is very special for communities, and there's something about Kirkland. I think we have a gene that makes us just want to celebrate. And as good of an occasion to celebrate as I can think of is to pay tribute to people who made this the kind of community that we all love to celebrate. And we're going to do that tonight for a couple of former council members. First order of business, however, is to do all of those introductions you always have to do, and God forbid that an elected official would forget to introduce another elected official. So I'm going to try and do this and hopefully get everybody. But I'm going to start with our honored guests. And tonight, Dave Russell, former city council member and former mayor, is here with his best friend. That would be his wife, Hazel. They are here together with their daughter, Kristen, and husband, Dominic Dobson. They're here with daughter, Catherine Russell, and husband, Christian Selk, and granddaughter, Kaylee Dobson, and grandson, Aiden Dobson. Former council member, Michelle Muse, and former mayor, Michelle Muse, is here with, well, she's here with the guy who liked to brag about the fact that he slept with a mayor. And while he doesn't anymore, he still claims it. And that would be her husband, Rob Muse, and her son, Jason Muse. And their longtime friends are with them tonight, Paul and Irene Bernard, and Wynn and Ian Hogben. Let's give them a round of applause. That's why we're here. From outside of Kirkland, we have the mayor of Redmond, Rosemary Ives. Rosemary, wave to us. Thank you. Also from Redmond, we have Redmond Council Member Nancy McCormick and Redmond Council Member Richard Cole. Wherever you guys are, there they are. Here's where the list starts getting long. We have Kirkland City Council members, Sance Contreras and his wife, Sue. Where are you, Sance? There they are. Council member Dave Asher and wife Hassan. Thank you, Dave. Council member Joyce Buchanan and her husband Ken had intended to arrive tonight, but they are unfortunately dealing with Joyce's elderly parents and are out of town. Council member Tom Dillon is here. Where are you, Tom? Council member Nona Gantz and husband Ulrich. Where are you? Thank you. Council member Joan McBride. I'm here, and so is my wife, Penny Sweet. Former Kirkland mayor and council member Doris Cooper and her husband, Ralph. Doris, where are you? There we are. Former council member and Mayor Everly Cox and his wife, Jen. Former council member Joe Martineau and wife Annabelle. Former council member and Mayor Bob Neer and wife Chris. Former council member Jeff Clark and wife Sharon. Former council member Dick Eakins and wife Sandy. Former council member and Mayor D.V. Hurst. That's a lot of formers, and that's one of the reasons why we like this place. So they helped a great deal. City staff. We've got a lot of city staff here tonight. You'll hear more from City Manager David Ramsey later, so hold your applause. You can do that later on. Assistant City Manager Lynn Stokesbury. Lynn? Public Works Director Jim Arndt. Finance Director Marilyn Beard. Fire Chief Jeff Blake. City Attorney Gail Gorid. Police Chief Ples Green. Administrative Services Director Matrio Kiambiruiro. I did it. Huh? Parks and Community Services Director Barry Russell. Planning Director Eric Shields. I want to take just a second and introduce somebody else. We have a former city manager from Kirkland with us tonight. It's his first trip back since taking a job in Peoria, that would be Arizona. And I was trying to think of what to say about Terry, and the only thing that came to mind were those little homilies, you know, like walk west or your hat will float. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You don't have to be sick to get well. But in all seriousness, Terry Ellis has made his trip back to Kirkland to honor former council members tonight. And Terry, you helped build this city too. Where are you? Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. He's important later on. Read your program, Dave. Unable to attend tonight, but who sent letters. Representative Kathy Lambert, and I'm going to read them because they are directed directly to Dave and Michelle. Dave and Michelle, separate letters, but they say the same thing from Kathy Lambert. On January 20th, I received an invitation to attend a celebration on your behalf. I am sorry to inform you that it is impossible for me to attend. Please accept my sincere congratulations on your retirement. The City of Kirkland and your constituency has flourished under your leadership. Your dedication and commitment sets a fine example for new council members to model. I am sure you will be missed. I hope you have some wonderful vacations planned. My very best wishes to you for a successful and satisfying future in whatever field of endeavor. Sincerely, Kathy Lambert, State Representative, 45th District. From Laura Ruderman, dear Ms. Muse, please accept my appreciation for your service to the City of Kirkland. As State Representative from the 45th District and as a resident of Kirkland, I have noticed your work on the City Council. I couldn't help but notice as you quickly served in every top capacity after taking the oath of office, Mayor Pro Tem, Deputy Mayor, and finally a term as Mayor. Your dedication to encouraging community involvement in government is honorable. One way of ensuring a community's needs are being met is through participation, and you certainly exemplified that. For all of the time and energy you poured into making this city a better place, I offer my thanks. Sincerely, Laura Ruderman, State Representative, 45th District. Dear Mr. Russell, I'd like to offer my congratulations and thanks. Congratulations on your long record of service to the City of Kirkland, a record that spans 3 decades. From your time on the Planning Commission in 1971 to your terms on the Kirkland City Council, you have dedicated 28 years to making the city a better place to live, work, and raise a family. That's why I'd like to offer my thanks. You are an incredible example of public service and dedication. I cannot imagine how many hours you devoted to public hearings, committee workshops, and council meetings. I believe that public service is an honorable profession and a privilege, something worthy of sacrifice. Certainly, you have sacrificed in order to serve, and I wanted to recognize that. You have done your city, and honored by your service, your work goes neither unnoticed nor unappreciated. Sincerely, Laura Ruderman, State Representative, 45th District. Now is the time to do what we all came here for, and that is to recognize some people who are going to come up and spend a few minutes with you sharing some perspectives. And this is the time at which both Dave and Michelle will probably feel good, feel embarrassed, probably laugh, maybe even a tear, who knows. So Dave and Michelle, come on up here and have a seat. You're going to have to sit and look at this bright light with the rest of everybody for the rest of the night. We thought about putting you on each side of the stage, but we figured you'd need each other at some point during the evening, so we kept you close by. Yeah, I told you, you know? Yeah. First on the agenda tonight is someone who's no stranger to Kirkland, someone with almost as much history as anybody in here. His name is Bob Neer. In 1967 to 1968, Bob served on the Committee for the Consolidation of Houghton and Kirkland. And I think it's safe to say neither place has ever been the same since. In 1969, he served on the Houghton Community Council. From 1970 to 1991, he served on the Kirkland City Council, and he was mayor from 1974 to 1979. From 1973 to 1989, he served on the Metro Council and was chair of the Transportation Committee from 1978 to 1988. From 1974 to 1977, he chaired the King County Joint Policy Committee. From 1978 to 1986, he served on the Puget Sound Council of Governments. And from 1989 to 1992, Bob served on the Puget Sound Air Transportation Committee, which was affectionately known as the Third Runway Committee. That's by way of explaining the civic involvement and the regional involvement of Bob Neer, who is going to share some words with you. Bob, come on up.
Well, it is right up here, isn't it? No holding hands in the back row up there. You know, it almost feels like this is your life, Michelle and Dave, but that doesn't seem to be quite right, you know. Anyway, this is quite an occasion to come up here and do this. It's almost like Old Home Week. It's, as you heard there, it's been 8 years since I've done the city council, but it's the people that I worked with even before I left the council, they're here. And there are some new faces, but there are many faces that I spent many years with, and which is a testament to the city of Kirkland and the kind of people that get involved in government here. And I'm going to refer to Michelle as a short-termer, and she put in over 7 years. And this is the thing you see: staff people and elected officials and people who work on committees and boards. They hang around a long time in Kirkland, and I think that's why it's the kind of the town it is today. But meantime, I'm going to just say a few brief comments about Michelle, mainly because I had already left when Michelle got here. So she and I never really had a chance to work together. And I didn't meet her until I had joined the Kirkland Sunrise Kiwanis group. And there she was, standing at the lectern, kind of riding herd over this unruly group of people. And she rapped the gravel vigorously and said, "Come on, you guys, settle down. We've got business to attend to." And Michelle always presided in good humor. And little did I realize then that she was practicing to be mayor. She didn't know it either, and she wasn't even on the council yet. But when an opening came up, she jumped at the challenge, and the rest is history. And Michelle did make a nice fit for the city. Her human service background brought a new dimension that the city council really didn't have. And her views were soon felt as the city probed deeper into social issues, most notably seeking to offer services to teens. And to Michelle, I say with tongue in cheek, as a short-termer, only time will tell your legacy. And to Rob, I say, okay, you can have her back. And thanks for letting us borrow her. Dave Russell, we go back a long way. So there's a couple more words about Dave, because he and I were on the council together for quite a number of years. I first heard of Dave Russell in the late 60s, and I admit I didn't hear much, except that he had a nice house with a view, and that his wife, Hazel, was a real go-getter. I next heard Dave's name when I was asked what I knew about him when he applied for a seat on the Planning Commission in 1971. I said, not much, except that I heard he wasn't bad in math. I checked around and some of his friends and neighbors, and one told me that he went to grade school in Canada, where he had difficulty with the English language. His teacher said he only pronounced 2 words correctly, oot and process. The school had him pegged as a displaced American. Maybe that's why Dave headed south to the U.S. when he was just 18, got his PhD from Caltech, married Hazel, and eventually ended up in Kirkland in 1967. Dave is an avid outdoorsman, and he tells that Kirkland reminded him of his beloved New Brunswick. As a motorcycle buff, Dave crossed Canada on a motorcycle at age 16. and has since been the proud possessor of 3 more. He never wears a black jacket, so you wouldn't know this. The other vehicle I remember him tooling around was a Datsun 280Z when I was on the council and he was on the planning commission. It was a real sporty hot rod car. The car seemed most unseemly for a staid, quiet college professor. They brought it when he became chairman of the planning commission. I guess he wanted to put his stamp on his image as one not to be fooled with. Either that or he was planning a quick getaway. His predecessor chairman, John Cushing, had started the land use ball rolling in 1973. When John resigned after being appointed to the city council to fill an unexpired term, Dave was appointed the new chairman. The planning commission's charge was to revamp the city's zoning code and draft a new comprehensive land use plan for the entire city. The objective was to preserve Kirkland's past as well as reshape Kirkland's future. It was a daunting task fraught with political and legal landmines. What emerged in 1977 was precedent-setting for a city in the state of Washington. It helped pave the way for the state's Growth Management Act in 1990. As its new chairman, the council suspected Dave didn't fully appreciate the task ahead. Those final years meant long, arduous 3 meetings a week, most of them out in the neighborhoods. I remember one meeting at the Peter Kirk Elementary School where over 400 people packed the gym. A typical crowd ranged from curious to the doubtful to the downright irate. But the city needed a workhorse, and one not afraid to plod on. Our workhorse was Dave. He was highly respected by his peers, known as fair and even-handed, and always considerate for the feeling of people. He was never mean, never petty, and quick to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And Dave himself would be the first to admit he was process-oriented. He held strong beliefs that in public affairs you discuss, disagree, argue, vote, and then you move on. I think this philosophy kept Dave in good stead with his peers, and I can attest his ability to move on has helped him keep his sanity. However, Dave had a weakness. You could bribe him with a dessert. Any dessert, preferably a chocolate dessert. And I remember one conference dinner when Dave had collected 4 desserts from around the table. I never did find out what the payoff was. Dave stayed the course for 8 years on the Planning Commission, and they must have been personally rewarding, and the city shall be ever grateful for his land use legacy. He moved on to the City Council, where his 16 years can best be summed up by an observation once made by Terry Ellis, who is here, and I quote, "Dave is truly one of the most rational, objective people I ever met. He is Kirkland's Dr. Spock." Terry, take a bow for that. And to think we almost lost Dr. Spock. Dave hated to run for office. Who doesn't? But Dave hated it with a passion. That may explain why when first elected to the city council, he won by the narrow margin of 33 votes. Another time, he narrowly defeated a young upstart named Larry Springer by 205 votes.
I creamed them.
By the way, Dave, whatever happened to that guy? We teased Dave by calling him Landslide Russell. Dave liked to reflect to his landslide victories as a mandate from the people. Well, Dave's last mandate came from Hazel when she said, "Hey, pack it up, it's time to go." And we wish you both well.
You know, Michelle followed Dave as mayor, and I didn't realize the motorcycle connection. You know, she learned more from him than I thought. Next on our agenda is Bob Edwards. And Bob's going to share some words about his time spent with Dave. It was interesting to me to note that Bob Edwards is a Bellevue High School graduate. He just got out of there long after I did. But we share Bellevue High School. I didn't know that. Bob graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in aeronautical engineering. In 1989 to 1999, he served on the Renton City Council. From 1996 to 1999, he was on the Puget Sound Water Quality Council. From 1992 to 1998, he served on the Association of Washington Cities Board and as president from 1996 to 1997. From 1992 to 1994, he served on the Growth Management Planning Council on their Economic Development Task Force. That's heavy stuff. 1992 to 1997, he was with the Suburban Cities Board and was on their Growth Management Committee. He is currently on the King County Growth Management Planning Council. He's the vice president of the Puget Sound Regional Council. And just starting this year in January, Bob began his career as an elected official to the Port of Seattle as a commissioner. So welcome Bob Edwards. He is here with his daughter Miranda, and I understand that he may slip out later because Miranda has to go to bed later. Bob Edwards.
Gosh, I didn't realize that Dave was so busy here in Kirkland because I know how much he's been doing regionally. I'm here because I owe Dave Russell a lot. Number one, he helped me with my port race. That counts a lot. But number two, he also was a real mentor regionally with the Puget Sound Regional Council in demonstrating the way in which you can try to represent the interests of the 230 some odd mayors and city council members of suburban King County in deciding a lot of the major regional issues involving transportation and growth management. And Dave really led the way and showed how it could be done in a very civilized manner. Also, Dave was there's something else I owe Dave. It goes back 27 years ago. He was my advisor at the University of Washington. I owe him a master's thesis. That's right. And I don't think you're going to get it. But fortunately, I'm lucky. There's a whole lot of the rest of us who owe Dave a lot. The region owes Dave. He has shown real leadership on the Puget Sound Regional Council. He was one of the early members on the Growth Management Board and chaired that board. And he was an early one to recognize the important connection between land use and transportation. The Puget Sound Regional Council was something that was set up in response to some of the original transportation funding initiatives from the federal government that required a regional process to be able to get the federal money back here. And really with Dave's leadership, establishing Vision 2020 and the Metropolitan Transportation Plan that we have here, the Regional Council has been is one of the nationally recognized metropolitan planning organizations around the country. And Dave has been instrumental in helping make that happen. He also served as president of the Puget Sound Regional Council, and it was during a very trying time because in addition to dealing with how we distribute those federal funds, the whole issue of the expansion of SeaTac, of our international airport, and dealing with airport capacity in the region is something that Dave was there during some very heated debates. I'm looking right out at Mayor Ives, and she very ably represented the interests of her city on that subject. I remember some of the major public meetings that we had during that whole time, but it was as a result of that, a major regional decision was made about what to do about capacity here in the Northwest, and I'm dealing with that in a continuing role now. But Dave also, of course, served on the Sound Transit Board and has been instrumental in moving along the whole issue of high-capacity transit here in the region, something that's absolutely necessary. He's been a real proponent of that and has done an excellent job of trying to reach the kind of consensus that we need. It's always a problem to kind of fund these big ideas, but we're working at it. And the Regional Council is one that has helped to try to continue to facilitate that. And I think, this regional involvement, and there's a tremendous amount of time that goes into this, especially when you're trying to deal with a 4-county region. This was recognized a few years ago. I don't know how many of you remember that Dave was designated by the Municipal League as the Public Official of the Year. I've been really impressed by that. The Public Official of the Year is is a tremendous title to receive, and Dave is so humble, he doesn't talk about that very much, but I think that is a testament to how the 1.5 million people that live here in King County really feel about Dave Russell and how well he's known outside of the city of Kirkland. And of course, we all of us outside of Kirkland know the tremendous transformation that's occurred here in this community, and just the wonderful quality and sense of community there is in Kirkland. And we've seen this happen. And as a lifelong resident here in King County, I've been impressed by what's happened, and Dave has been a part of it. I didn't realize you were involved in politics as early as back in those days when I was a college student. This goes back a long ways when you were on the Planning Commission. So now I know what you were doing part of the time. Maybe that's why you weren't so hard on me about my master's thesis. But anyway, thanks. I want to also say he never mentioned that. In all the years that I've worked with him, he never brought that up. It was very, very kind and diplomatic of you. Thank you, Dave.
Lights bothering you yet? No. No, good. Next, we're going to hear from Wynn Hogben. Wynn Hogben, as soon as she gets up here, will betray a known fact, and that is she was born in Scotland. You'll pick that up right away. Lived in Australia, Fiji, New Guinea, Malaysia, and Indonesia. But for the last 22 years, she's lived with her husband of 34 years here in the Pacific Northwest, and indicates that she isn't going anywhere else anymore. She is past chair of the Washington Food Coalition. She is currently on the King County Food Collaboration Advisory Board, the East Side Human Services Alliance, and is a partner for a Habitat for Humanity house. Wynn has also worked for MSC, that would be Multi-Service Center, now known as HopeLink, for 18 years. She is the Director of Emergency Services, overseeing the food banks and the financial assistance programs for the Bellevue, Bothell, Redmond, Kirkland, and Carnation chapters of HopeLink, and she's here to share her history with Michelle Muse. Wynn?
I wore this specially so that I'd blend in with the background. I came and viewed it all a couple of days ago. I joined the Multi-Service Center, now known as HopeLink, over 18 years ago, and I walked into a staff meeting, and there was Michelle. And from that day on, I think she took me under her wing, literally and figuratively. Just a little bit taller than I am. I thought that she had worked for this agency for many years before I arrived. In actual fact, it was only 6 months. But she exuded such confidence and such self-assurance and such knowledge that she fooled me for a long, long time. And we worked together at the multi-service centers for 10 years. And during that time, I got to know the person who wasn't just working for low-income families. She was caring for them. Her whole heart went into her work on a daily basis. We used to do a holiday basket program, and we worked, from the beginning of November till Christmas Eve, we worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Michelle took the time, other than that time, to put together baskets for families who hadn't been adopted by the community. Vietnamese families, Laotian families, who weren't terribly popular at that time. She would go to her good friend, Irene Bernard, and get one of these tickets that, you could go to Lamont's after hours as a friend of Lamont's. And she'd go and she'd spend a fortune, and I do mean a little fortune, buying extra gifts. Lamont's loved her. Buying gifts for families who didn't have families. And in the midst of all this, I happened to see a letter from the Union Gospel Mission on her desk. And I said, "Hey, Michelle, Union Gospel Mission's writing to you. She said, oh yeah. She donated to the Union Gospel Mission Thanksgiving dinner program. And I said to her, but what about our program? You know, we're feeding 1,000, 1,200 families on the east side. She said, there are poor in Seattle too. So I went down even shorter than my 5 feet nothing and thought, she's right. And she took this attitude and spread it throughout the East Side. She started a coalition called the East Side Providers. Sounds terribly simple. But it was the first time that it was recognized on the East Side that there was sufficient poverty to get together groups of people and groups of providers to try to network. And Michele was the one who started it on the East Side. Congratulations. And she then went on to be a member of the East Side Human Service Roundtable, and a very apt one there. But while she was still at Multi-Service Centre, you think that she got the bicycling or the motorcycling from Dave, but I don't think it was. I remember the night that she went to the Silver Dollar. They still talk about it in the Silver Dollar. She went to collect a donation. They had an evening where all the proceeds were going to the multi-service centres. So Michele went to collect it, and she just happened to stay, and she just happened to dance with about 10 of the bikers in their leather outfits, and was invited back for the next year's donation as well, so she went at that time too. But most of all, I want to tell you about the Michele I know, the Michele who's the friend. Because Michele is a great friend. She's a very caring, very loving, very giving friend. But in being that to me, she's also that to all of the folks that she helped through her human service programs at Multi-Service Centre and then on the Kirkland City Council. It really wasn't fashionable to be poor on the East Side. It was a hidden thing. We didn't talk about it. Michele talked about it openly and got people to understand that being poor didn't make you a second-class citizen, that being poor was you and me without our jobs. And it was brought out into the open, and when people recognized what she was saying and doing, they gave. They gave as individuals, they gave as organizations, and Kirkland, of course, gives as a city. HopeLink is very, very lucky to have the Kirkland City Council as a great supporter of ours. So to Michele, I say, where are you going to turn up next? Because we cannot and we will not let that love and that caring and that giving go away. Thank you. On behalf of Doreen Marchione, our Executive Director, and the Board of Directors of HopeLink, we have a little present for Michele. Thank you.
I love presents.
Michele, the biker babe. I love that.
I hope this isn't stale bread.
Our next presenter is Donovan Tracy. And Donovan Tracy is going to have words to share for both Dave and Michele. Donovan is a UW graduate in 1969 in urban planning. In 1969 to 1983, he worked for the Land Use and Environmental Policy Division of King County as a planner, and then as manager of the Resource Planning Group. But he got smart after that, and he became the vice president for investments of A.G. Edwards & Sons brokers at Caroline Point. Good move. 1995, he was president of the Kirkland Chamber of Commerce. In 1997 to 1999, he served on the Kirkland Performance Center Board of Directors. He was the business rep to the Trans Lake Washington Study Committee, and he and Nona Gantz to this day will share a bond. Few people will. He also served the advisory panel for the East Side Business Journal, and currently lives in Lake Forest Park with his wife, Linda. So Donovan, come on up and share some words with us.
Wow, finally on stage at the Kirkland Performance Center. Susie, does this count as a performance? How much are we going to lose on it? I was talking with Terry Ellis out in the lobby before we came in here, and this is the first time he's been in the Performance Center, and he was excited that we were going to have the program in here despite this bright light, and so he could see it. And Terry, if I had an ounce of talent, I mean, I'd do a little soft shoe or something for you. I mean, you really need to see this place. Well, it's a real privilege to be here as part of a program to honor two people who I admire and respect very, very much, and to celebrate two remarkable careers of extraordinary, unselfish public service. While attempting to put together a few thoughts for tonight, I did something that was very politically incorrect, which would be okay because I do that all the time, except that these are two of the most politically correct people that I've ever known. And what I did was I made a gender distinction, and we all know how politically incorrect that is. I asked myself, what do you say about Michelle? And then what do you say about Dave? Well, with men, it's easy. You just say he's a good guy. In fact, if it's done casually and spontaneously, it can be the highest form of compliment. Like, what do you know about Dave Russell? Oh, he's a good guy. But with Michelle, you would have to elaborate, of course, by at least saying, she's so sensitive to people's needs. She's an enabler. Or how about this? Even though her plate is so full, she can really bring all the people to the table. Well, Dave, you're sensitive to people's needs too. You're a great enabler, and you spent years getting the right people to the table. Oh, and Michelle, you're a good guy. We all know that the electoral constituency of Dave and Michelle, as with all council members, are the citizens of Kirkland within the neighborhoods that they reside. Dave and Michelle have, as we all know, done a wonderful job representing that constituency. However, there's more to making a community whole, and they played a key part in it. The business community, or what I would like to call economic interests, used to be thought of as a polar institution, somehow in conflict with the broader community by its sheer definition. When some tried to change this negative and counterproductive dynamic, Michelle and Dave were there, listening, understanding, and initiating change. In 1993, shortly after Michelle was seated on the council, Dwayne Lund, then chamber president, met with council members to begin building bridges to improve relationships between business and the city, between business and the neighborhoods. Dwayne used to say, what's good for the community is good for business. And I'm sure that that was a welcome overture to Michelle and Dave. Michelle went back to the city and inquired why they, the city, didn't belong to the chamber, and initiated action that made the city a dues-paying member. Bridges thereafter went up left and right. Economic baseline studies, economic forms, comp plan, economic elements, et cetera, et cetera. Polar interests became mutual stewards of the economy of this very special place. Thanks to their patience, willingness to understand issues relative to their business constituency, and their leadership in shaping change, we came to share the same vision for Kirkland as a prosperous place for people to live and work, to achieve their life goals, and to contribute to the betterment of the community. And on behalf of Jim Longer, president of the Kirkland Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber of Commerce, I am very pleased to present to Michelle and Dave the Friends of Kirkland Award.
Our last presenter tonight really needs no introduction. Most of you have all met him. Most of you all at least know who he is, and is going to bring to the presentation tonight a perspective of the people who respect these two people very much, and that's the staff of Kirkland. So, City Manager Dave Ramsey.
Good evening. Good evening, Your Honors. Wow, I mean, after all these kind words and great thoughts, you've kind of like, so what's there like left to say here? In kind of anticipating this, I was thinking of that old line about Elizabeth Taylor's seventh husband on their wedding night when he was alleged to have said, "I know what I'm supposed to do, but how do I make it interesting?" So, with that as a challenge, let me try to go forward here. First of all, I'd like to thank very quickly 4 people that are very much part of this event and have, in fact, made it possible. First of all, to Hazel and to Rob, I want to thank you on behalf of city staff for sharing your family with the Kirkland family. All the phone calls, all the Friday afternoon packets, all the meetings alike, I'm sure it's taken a major toll on the family, and we very much appreciate you sharing these very fine people with us. Next, I too would like to add my welcome on behalf of staff to Terry Ellis and his wife in terms of welcoming back to this town. We're literally sitting in a place where Terry's signature is all over. We benefit in this community from staff services and just the very quality from Terry's efforts. So Terry, again, welcome on behalf of staff. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the person that we all work for here, namely JJ. This event did not come by accident. It took some work, and as we at City Hall love to do, we created a task force. Well, the task force was made up of a number of us, but it went very smoothly because all we did is JJ told us what to do, and here we have this event tonight. So JJ and Linda, thank you very much. Recently, the Kirkland Courier ran a front-page article in which they titled it, "Kirkland, a Most Balanced City." I personally liked that headline a great deal and got to thinking that really these two people very much represent the balance of our community, and from a couple of perspectives. One, from a sense of knowledge and interest, and secondly, from a sense of thought process and personality. I'd like to just spend a few moments talking about each of those areas. In terms of knowledge and interest, first of all, with Michele, it's been said already tonight very well, her personal commitment to human services is undoubtedly a major driving value of the city. And to staff's perspective, it constantly reminded us that there are people behind the numbers and the issues that we're dealing with, that there's a human face to those very tough issues that we wrestle with. And that was a constant reminder from her and a very valuable insight. And as Wen said, in this land of plenty, those are very much in need, and we constantly reminded with very strong and effective advocacy. I personally liked one of Michele's lines that I carry with me always, namely the challenge that we've done a good job building a city, now it's time to build a community. And I think that's very telling words in terms of the values of this community. With Dave, we've heard tonight about his role with regional issues, particularly in the issues of growth and transit. And I think it's a very helpful reminder for us that as we try to get beyond local control, to realize that we in Kirkland are part of a greater whole, that there's real value in public policy, and there is a notion called a greater good. And as we get caught up in NIMBYs and Lulus and all those kinds of things, the fact that the greater good, that there is value there, was something that Dave constantly reminded us. So we see, in terms of interest, from the very individual to the region, these two represent a great balance in our community. Going beyond that to thought process and personality, I first turned back to Michele. And in terms of how Michele worked through issues, it was always fascinating. I would label it from kind of free-form association to introspection to a well-thought-out position. And oftentimes the free-form association took the form of a phone call in which the phone went further and further from my ear as Michele was explaining how she felt about something, and I would try to interject with Michele, how do you really feel about this issue? And then we'd go on some more. And at the end of that, usually the pattern would go something after that phone call, an hour or two or a day later, or something, well, I had a chance to think about it, and then we finally get to what I thought was almost always a very well-reasoned thought process, but it had the personality of both a good public policy, but also human values with political reality built in. And I think that's, again, a real contribution to the whole political process that we deal with. Beyond that, though, is a very well-known sense of humor. And with this sense of humor became a great perspective. And from a staff point of view, and she knew just when to use it and how to use it, it would prop you up when you're down or put you down when you were maybe riding a little bit too high. And in terms of the latter, this is a story I said before, but I think it bears repeating. Our friend Jim Arndt at a study session, the microphones all of a sudden went kaplunk, and Jim very cleverly said, I'll pretend I'm talking. Michele, our mayor, without missing a beat, said, and we'll pretend we're listening. Yeah. How many of us who have dealt with some of Jim Arndt's passionate arguments have thought the same thing, you know? So, Michele, on behalf of all of us, we thank you. But then we turn to Dave in terms of his thought process and personality. And here we have the intellectual, the academic, and constantly asking us the question, why? And I think many times it's a question that we need to ask more often. What are those assumptions behind positions that we all too easily arrive at? That there's value in discussion and debate, and through that comes a better answer. I can remember when I was kind of first introduced to this thought process, and I was relatively new on the job. I was still kind of in the honeymoon period. And we had our first council retreat. And up until then, I'd kind of been used to saying kind of things that were like viewed as profound, like let's talk about how to talk about it or something like that. I promise I'll never say that again. But at the time, it was kind of viewed with some degree of wisdom or something. Very much this honeymoon period. And here we are, went off to the retreat. And so as this new city manager, I thought I'd be very profound and say, you know, I think it's time for us to revisit our vision, our strategic plan, thinking this was going to be some great sense of insight. And our professor here said, we've already done that. Why do we need to do that again? Long pause as my life passed before me. We were a half hour into retreat and we had a day and a half to go, and I said, what are we going to do now? So it was that question of why, and trust me, I couldn't answer it, and we had to move on to other things. And so, but in that question of why, I mean, it's so often, I think, a very helpful thing. Dave, I would say that we're having our retreat here in the next month, and guess what? The topic of vision is back. And you're not invited, so. Okay. So, a balanced city. But I think more than a balanced city, a very, very special community. And my sense is that Dave and Michelle, the two people we have before us tonight, represent the very best of us in this very special committee. I think that the greatest tribute that any public official can make is the sense of having made a difference. And I can truly say on behalf of staff that you have, and we're very, very appreciative of that, your leadership, your trust, your values and the like. And so on behalf of all the staff and the community, we thank you very much for your service. And we have a couple little tokens of our appreciation for you. If Lynn could help me out. There he is. Okay. A couple photographs here. One, we couldn't help but do this. This is a photograph of our favorite project, namely the church. And then we have Rogues Gallery here, namely the department directors out in front of, I think, of our favorite piece of public art for Michelle, the Puddle Jumpers. So, Michelle.
Thank you.
And Dave, complete with broken glass. We have all the directors waiting for the 255 bus. So once again, thank you, thank you, thank you.
We're almost done. Before closing, so I make sure I don't forget here, I want to remind everybody when we finish here tonight, we'll go back out into the lobby and encourage everybody, if you haven't already, to sign the photographs that are out there on the easels, which Dave and Michelle will be taking with them, and to join us for cake. We're about to wrap it up, but it wouldn't be complete if they didn't get something from the council. JJ and I kind of got our heads together and we came up with this little idea that it's a shirt. It says Kirkland. We've seen them before, so we thought you better go home with a shirt. But the other idea we had was what we dug out of the archives were the minutes to the very first meeting Michelle attended as a council member. And we put that together with a copy of the minutes of the very last meeting. What's interesting about it, I went through those minutes and I just wanted to highlight something here. On Michelle's very first meeting, that would be February 2nd, 1993, the meeting was called to order by Mayor David Russell. And attending that night were council members Sanz Contreras, Doris Cooper, Dick Eakins, Nona Gantz, and Joe Martineau. And I thumbed through the minutes, and I found this one item here that said, Andy Barton, assistant to the city manager, provided a status report on the State Department of Transportation's plans with respect to I-405 and SR 520. And we've come a long way, haven't we? That was Michelle's first meeting. Dave's first meeting, January 3rd, 1984, was called to order by Mayor D.V. Hurst. And in attendance were Doris Cooper, Everly Cox, Stan Gregg, Joseph Martineau, and Robert Neer, City Manager Alan Locke, and Attorney Ralph Thomas. And I looked through this and I found this little item. A December 19th, 1983 letter was acknowledged by the council from the Pantleys Group Incorporated, who had been asked to operate Isaac's, a Moss Bay restaurant on the Kirkland waterfront in the Chafee building, now located at 205 Lake Street. And what Dave did not know was that about 10 years later, he'd have a closer relationship with that young man. The last minutes of their very last meeting was the same meeting. So I just thought I'd just turn to the very last item. This is the last official act Dave and Michelle took part in. It was to pass ordinance number 3733 entitled, An Ordinance of the City of Kirkland Relating to the Salary for the City Manager. It's the last thing you did before leaving town. So for Dave and Michelle, this is Michelle. There's a copy of the shirt and the minutes, and Dave. And thanks very much. Before we leave, we're going to give Dave and Michelle an opportunity to say some things.
Should we take our watches off? Thank you all for coming tonight. This is a real treat, and I'm very happy to be here with my family and friends. And I wanted to say we had other special friends with us too, Maureen and Richard Atherton. And I know Maureen will tell me tomorrow that, you know, we didn't mention her name, so I have to do that now. Thank you, Wynn, for your lovely words. Thank you, Donovan. Thanks, City Manager. You know, when I used to make those phone calls, he never told me that I was doing that kind of stuff. I always figured he just was listening with the ear he can't hear out of. You know, again, thanks for everything. I have found myself, I have to admit, watching some of those council meetings now. The greatest thing is that I can flip the channel and watch something else whenever I want to. And do you know how articulate I am now when I'm watching those council meetings? I say the most profound things. So it is easier to watch it than to do it. So thanks for all the former council members who are here and the present ones, and maybe there are a couple of future ones sitting out here too, and for all the rest of you who have come to make this a real special night for Dave and for me.
I have some notes here. As a university professor, I'm used to talking for 50 minutes. I hope that's all right. I didn't know what the agenda was tonight. But it's great to see so many people here come here to celebrate the fact that you're getting rid of us. Kirkland is a special place, and there are a number of reasons for that. And one of them is that the things that we have done here that are special and recognized regionally, they don't just happen. It takes people with wisdom, with wisdom and with vision and the energy to put behind those things to make things really happen. And I think we can all be proud of our community. At the same time, you can look around you and see lots of opportunities for more wisdom and more vision. So none of us should give up. There's lots more to do in this community, and there's even more to do regionally. And I think all of us know now, it's no secret anymore, that the issues that are going to kill us if we don't handle them right are regional issues. If we are going to continue to grow, and as the Northwest continues to be discovered as a great place to live, and we will grow, and as that happens, we are going to lose our quality of life unless we take things seriously. And the serious issues are, of course, growth and how we handle it, and its handmaiden, congestion, and what we do about it. And congestion, the answer has got to be balance. We've got to have a balanced transportation system. The voters out there are smart enough to know that. They voted for Metro. Metro is an extremely successful bus system. They support the HOV lanes in spite of the letters you see in the newspapers on occasion. The people out there supported Sound Transit. They have the vision and know where this community has to go. Unfortunately, we will always have to revisit. We'll have to revisit growth management. Each session of the legislature will have many, many threatening bills to kill growth management. It is something, it's a new idea, and people are not comfortable with it. It's change, and people aren't comfortable with it. The same thing with transportation. These alternatives, providing alternative transportation, people aren't comfortable with it. It's a change in their world. But that change has to come, and we are just barely scratching the surface. Regionally, we've got lots of things going, and I think we can be proud of where we are. But at any moment, we can go backwards, and this great, wonderful region that we're part of and that we're raising our children in and our grandchildren can go to hell, in fact. So all of us need to take our responsibilities to the future of this region seriously. And I want to say that it's been I want to thank you for the privilege of working with you and for you on all these issues that I think are so important. So thanks a lot. And we're free.
And thanks to the two of you, and let's go back out to the lobby and enjoy some cake.